العليم الحكيم سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم قل رب زدني علما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وإذا قيل لهم اتبعوا ما أنزل الله قالوا بل نتبع ما ألفينا عليه آباءنا أولو كان آباؤهم لا يعقلون شيئا ولا يهتدون ومثل الذين كفروا كمثل الذي ينعق بما لا يسمع إلا دعاء ونداء صم بكم عمي فهم لا يعقلون. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. So yesterday we talked about the basic translation of these past ayats, that when it's mentioned to them that follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent on, they say we follow what we found our forefathers following. Even though their forefathers, they were not capable of using their intellect to decipher what is right from wrong, at the same time they were not rightly guided. And then we also mentioned that their example is like that person who calls out to someone who doesn't understand the language, be it a human being who is deaf, dumb, blind, or whether it's an animal or whatever it be. So someone is calling something to something that is benefiting them, and they hear only the sounds of a voice. They don't understand what is being related to them. And so it's as though they are deaf, they are dumb, and they are blind, and so therefore they cannot use their intelligence to decipher the correct way and be rightly guided. Now, a question comes up, and this is something that we hear a lot these days, that people say that we follow the Kitab and Sunnah, we don't follow any human beings. We don't follow the A'immat al-Mujtahideen and the Imams and the scholars that came after and sort of sorted out the entirety of Sharia so that it becomes easy for people to follow. And they use this ayat, and they use other ayats. That we don't follow what we found our forefathers, we follow what is in the Kitab and Sunnah. Okay. So what is being said here? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that these people are blameworthy because they follow their ancestors who do not have the power of reasoning, and they are not rightly guided. Which means that your ancestors who had the power of reasoning and are rightly guided, they are to be followed. Right. So we are to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our total obedience is only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we need to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Now, to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, we have to understand the Quran, we have to understand the Sunnah, we have to understand the Sharia through its language, through its principles, through its the whole system. That requires long years of study and understanding. And that requires a level, what we call ijtihad, the ability to ascertain from the book and from the Sunnah what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, what He's saying to us. Right? This is not the activity of every individual. It's not even the activity of every person who understands the Arabic language. And in Sahih Bukhari, it's a very interesting hadith that we just read in the Dars yesterday, in fact. So some of the Ansar, now keep in mind, the Arabic language was at its peak at the time of Rasulullah, and nobody knew the Arabic language better than the Arabs of that time. That's why we call them Al-Arab al-Khullas, the pure Arabs who were not mixed with anything else. Their language was absolutely pure. Every small child understood the Arabic language like our scholars of Arabic literature don't understand today. They had that level of understanding. So some of the Ansar were in Makkah al-Mukarramah after Hajj, and they asked Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas a masala. If a woman has her menses and she's actually performed her tawaf al-ifadha, so does she have to perform her tawaf al-wida before going back, or she has to wait? So Ibn Abbas says, and mentioned to them, the ways of the Prophet ﷺ, that he had witnessed himself that if she has performed the tawaf al-ifadah and she enters into menses after that, and her people are going back, then she doesn't have to actually perform that tawaf al-wida. So those Ansar from Medina, they said, well, you know what, we're not going to leave the qawl or the saying of our Imam Zayd ibn Thabit, because Zayd ibn Thabit was also a great Sahabi and a great faqih, and he had told them that they have to. So Abdullah ibn Abbas didn't tell them, look, what are you I'm telling you Kitab Allah and you're telling me somebody from Medina told you so and so. He said, okay, fine. Because he recognized that just as I am a scholar of Islam, Zayd is a scholar of Islam, and though they are Arabs, they understand the Arabic language much better than we do. But they didn't have the wherewithal to understand, the idiosyncrasies of the Quran and Sunnah. So therefore, they were following the instructions or the guidance from a person who does. Sayyidina Zayd radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So Ibn Abbas said to them, okay, when you go back to Medina, further investigate. And it goes on to explain that ultimately they did come to that conclusion. So what is the conclusion is that we are not to follow people who do not have, number one, proper guidance, and they don't have the intellectual, prowess and the intellectual, expertise to be able to extract those. So we need to be able to find people who do. And lastly, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, what does he say? He says, I follow the deen of who? Of my ancestors. Ibrahim, وإسحاق وإسماعيل وإسحاق تبعت ملة آباء إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق. So actually Yusuf alayhi salam is a prophet of Allah, and he says, what do? I follow my ancestors. Why? Because كانوا يعقلون وكانوا مهتدين. They knew how to reason and they had proper guidance. So we need to find people who have the proper guidance, and those who do not, we do not follow them. So I hope that that's well understood, and that would clarify any misconceptions, particularly in this day and age where we live in the infobesity age, where we are being bombarded by all types of information. 99.9% of it is spurious. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand the truth and follow it. Ameen. Thumma ameen. Wa akhir da'wana. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.